Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War breaking news update for the 27th of December 2024. And I'm going to talk to you about this tanker that has been out and about in the waters doing damage to the S-Link cable connecting Finland and Estonia. So Alexander Stubb, the president of Finland, and other Finnish authorities held a press conference with updates about the S-Link 2 cable damage, and here are some of the main points from it, and we're going to go and look at a Lloyds list article as well. So Anton Gerashenko says, Stubb was asked whether the cable damage was a hybrid attack from Russia. He replied that no conclusions have been made at this time, but, quote, if we find out that it was sabotage, we will definitely attribute it and immediately. Now, this was a good 5 hours ago that Gerashenko wrote this, so there is some more to add to this. He was also asked whether there had been diplomatic reaction from Russia. The answer is no. Stubb replied there have already been 3 cable damage incidents near Finland within a year. He added that this cannot all be attributed to a coincidence or accident. Yeah, indeed. President Stubb shared that he talked to President of Estonia, Alan Karis, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Estonia will step in with actions to protect critical infrastructure. NATO will increase its presence in the Baltic Sea. And Estonia has sent a patrol ship to the Baltic Sea to protect the S-Link 1 energy cable. The vessel will be in active contact with the Finnish Navy and border guards of the neighbouring country, and will act on the basis of mutual agreement. By preliminary information, Eagle S, the ship detained for being a suspect in damaging the cable, belongs to the Russian Shadow Fleet. 4 data cables are also currently out of service. Police of Finland will launch a seabed investigation at the site of the S-Link 2 electric cable damage. The guard ship Turva is heading to the S-Link 2 site today. The officers and crew of Eagle S vessel are cooperating with the Finnish authorities. Okay, now, what we then hear is, we're going to go to a statement on Twitter from that same President Stubb. I don't know if it's Stubb or Stubb. Finland, as usual, says Shashank Joshi from The Economist, showing a masterful and unusual combination of sang-froid and seriousness in response to a national security threat. So, this is today the President of the Republic and the Ministerial Committee of Foreign and Security Policy held an extraordinary meeting. We discussed the cable damage in the Gulf of Finland. My 3 messages, says the President. 1, Finland has a strong capacity to respond to situations like this. Our authorities are working swiftly and in close cooperation. The situation is under control. We have no reason to be worried. We are now investigating the incident. 2, we have briefed the key international partners together with Estonia. We have asked for reinforced NATO presence in our neighbourhood, especially around critical infrastructure. Our request has already been met. 3, together with our allies and partners, we will continue to address the challenges posed by Russia's Shadow Fleet. This includes measures agreed with NATO, the EU and our partners, such as inspections of the insurance certificates of vessels. We are also looking at ways based on international maritime law to respond more effectively to similar incidents in the future. And as I've explained before, it is really good to adhere to law. We are law-abiding nations, and we are big on the norms, and the end of the day, we want a rules-based order. On the other hand, those countries who willfully break those rules are at a sort of advantage because they get to do what the hell they want. Now, if there are no massive ramifications to those nations for doing so, in this case Russia, then they continue breaking those rules and they're able to break them. But if we want to pursue them and take control of those ships or do whatever, we have to adhere to those laws and norms. So we're somewhat constrained, and they can do what they like, and then they flee off to Egypt or do whatever. So it is frustrating, but that is the nature of trying to uphold the rule of law. The question is, what are the ramifications for Russia for doing this? Because this, in my opinion, is war. And we're going to go and look at what Lloyds list has said. So the Russian Shadow Fleet tanker seized for damaging the S-Link 2 cable in the Baltic Sea had spy equipment, is the latest we hear, for tracking NATO ships and aircraft installed on it. So that equipment was installed on the ship, not NATO aircraft. The high-tech equipment on board was abnormal for a merchant ship and consumed more power from the ship's generator, leading to blackouts, says Special Kherson Kat here. And indeed, H.I. Sutton says, great article by Michelle Visa-Bockman here in Lloyds List, and that's what we're going to go and have a look at. Broadly saying that the Eagle S, suspected of cutting undersea cables between NATO members Finland and Estonia, is now also suspected of carrying sanction-busting Russian oil, so it is illegal shadow fleet vessel, and being used as a covert intelligence ship. Okay, so this is the article. Russia-linked cable cutting tanker seized by Finland, quote, was loaded with spying equipment. Eagle S, the Russian-linked tanker suspected of damaging the underwater electricity cable on Christmas Day, was kitted out with special transmitting and receiving devices that were used to monitor naval activity, according to a source with direct involvement in the ship, and has since been detained by the Finnish police. Russia-linked dark fleet tanker Eagle S, seized by Finland on the 25th for damaging the undersea cable, had transmitting and receiving devices installed and effectively allowed it to become a spy ship for Russia, Lloyds List has learnt. The high-tech equipment on board was abnormal for a merchant ship and consumed more power than the ship's generator, leading to repeated blackouts. A source familiar with the vessel who provided commercial maritime services to it as recently as 7 months ago. As well as Eagle S, another related tanker from the same ownership cluster, the UK-sanctioned Swift Sea Rider, also had similar equipment installed, Lloyds List was told. Cook Islands flagged Eagle S and Honduras flagged Swift Sea Rider are two of 26 elderly Russia-linked tankers with opaque ownership structures connected to 3 related ship managers, including 2 sanctioned by the UK government 12 months ago for propping up Putin's war machine. The sanctions circumventing tankers were bought between 2022 and 2023 and placed under bareboat charter arrangements with Eiger Shipping, the shipping arm of Russian oil trader Litasco. So in other words, these were going out about doing their normal shipping businesses. We heard, for example, that Greece had a lot of tankers that suddenly weren't Greek after the outbreak of the war because they were transferred over to ownership into the Russian black fleet, that dark fleet, shadow fleet of cargo vessels that are under spurious ownership and not quite sure what's going on with them. Well, it's really interesting that Greece went from having a whole bunch of ships to having not quite so many, kind of like that. Eagle S was boarded by Finnish forces investigating sabotage of the S-Link 2 undersea cable that disrupted the supply of electricity to Estonia from Finland. The tanker slowed and dragged its anchor along the cable around midday on Christmas Day, Finland's police said. Another 3 cables were also damaged. The source also declined to be identified to protect their safety, supplied at least 60 confidential documents about Eagle S to Lloyds List in June, including the vetting report that outlined many safety deficiencies discovered during an inspection undertaken while at anchor in Danish waters that month. These documents and others relating to dark fleet tankers providing confidential and private information about class insurance and flag and other technical and regulatory requirements were verified as genuine at the time. In July, Lloyds List reported the serious deficiencies on Eagle S that compromised environmental and crew safety and underscored the poor maintenance and absence of adherence to regulatory and technical standards for the wider dark fleet. So it gets reported, but I'm wondering if this information coming out about the equipment on board was something that was found out in June and July, and did the correct authorities know about this? And if they did, what are we doing letting it go over these cables if we knew it had spy equipment on board? And if it's only just come out now, but it was known about in June and July by this source, then what's going on there? Or is this information that is actually on top of the inspection information we're just learning about here? And what I'm trying to say is the idea that it has spy equipment on board, if that's found out just now and that's coming from a source to do with the inspection going on now with the Finnish, then okay, fair enough. But if we knew that before, that's really frustrating. They said listening and recording equipment was brought onto the 20-year-old tanker via huge portable suitcases along with many laptops that had keyboards for Turkish and Russian languages when calling at Turkey and Russia. The equipment is kept on a bridge or in the Monkey Island, they said. The Monkey Island is the topmost place on the ship. The transmitting and receiving devices are used to record all radio frequencies and upon reaching Russia were offloaded for analysis. Quote, they were monitoring all NATO naval ships and aircraft, Lloyds List was told. They had all the details on them. They were just matching their frequencies. Russians, Turkish, Indian radio officers were operating it. I mean, was this found out in June or July? Man, this is like... And again, if it was found out, then that ship should never have been able to go over those cables. There's a lot that needs to be answered here. Russians, Turkish, Indian radio officers were operating at Eagle S, also dropped sensors type devices in the English Channel during a transit, they said. They said no further equipment returned to the ship after it was offloaded for analysis to their knowledge, but other devices were placed on another related tanker, Swiftsea Rider. Claims that Russian-linked merchant ships were being used for spying and sabotage activities in the Baltic Sea, where Russia is surrounded by NATO allies, underscores a rising geopolitical tension in the region amid calls by European political leaders for increased maritime infrastructure defence. My opinion is that we should treat this as an act of war, and we should just be not allowing any Russian tanker or anything associated with Russia to come through European or British or American waters or Japanese or Australian. This is absolutely not acceptable. The article continues. The damage to the S-Link 2 cable is the second time vital undersea cables between NATO allies have been damaged in 2 months. The first time was a commercial ship suspected of sabotage, and that's been taken into custody by authorities. So other times we had the new Polar Bear and the Yipeng 3, which has done a runner to Egypt. In November, China flagged bulk carrier Yipeng 3, there you go, was accused of dragging anchor to damage the Sea Lion 1 communication cable connecting Finland and Germany. The bulk carrier spent more than 4 weeks in international waters in the Danish Straits as German, Sweden, Danish and Finnish officials investigated, but ended up sailing last Saturday. The crew on Eagle S would have been aware of its spying activities, quote, as this could not be hidden, but were, quote, threatened with their life, so everybody kept quiet, the source said. Interesting. They have replaced captains when they raised this issue, they said. The beneficial owners of Eagle S and Swiftsea Rider are hidden behind complex corporate structures. The registered owner of Eagle S is a single ship structure that purports to have an office in the business centre of the luxury hotel in Dubai. The ship manager, Mumbai-based Peninsula Maritime India Private Limited, cannot be contacted. One of the telephone numbers on its website did not answer. A second number hung up when we asked if this was the phone number for Peninsula Maritime. Emails were not answered. The company's website claims the company is registered in England, signalling it is a copy, likely a copy and paste of a template commonly found in dark fleet shipping companies. So Lloyds list defines a tanker as part of a dark fleet if it is aged 15 years and over, anonymously owned, and or has a corporate structure designated to obfuscate beneficial ownership discoveries, solely deployed in sanctioned oil trades, and engaged in one or more of the deceptive shipping practices outlined in US State Department guidance issued in May 2020. The figures exclude tankers tracked to government-controlled shipping entities such as Russia's Sovcomflot or Iran's National Iranian Tanker Co., and those already sanctioned. Interesting stuff. So there you go. This is huge. The question is, what do we do with this? What do we, as allies of Ukraine, as NATO, as Europe, the EU, as UK, as the US, etc., etc.? Tendar just finishes off the case around the oil tanker's Eagle S, which is most certainly responsible for damaging the S-Link 2 undersea cable, is getting even more interesting. It appears the ship was not only involved in sabotage, but in espionage as well. The Eagle S had transmitting and receiving devices, as we heard, installed that effectively allowed it to become a spy ship for Russia, says Lloyds list. The high-tech equipment was abnormal, as we'd heard, all that same stuff. So here's a little bit from his, what he thinks. I think the Finnish police has caught a major fish. This is a devastating strike against Russian spy agencies and another great embarrassment for Moscow. I think this is one of those things that opens up a whole can of worms. Like this, if this is, one of many ships, we already hear about the other ship that was involved. How many ships are there? What do we do thinking, well, there's a probability that any Russian Shadow Fleet vessel that passes us by is a spy ship? Do we try and board all these ships? How escalatory does that become? Is this a trigger for NATO Article 5? I've talked about this many times, which is, if a tank drives over the border with a Russian flag on it and pops a shot at something in our country, we say that is war. But if there's an information war going on, if there's cyber warfare going on with plausible deniability, if there are spy ships, if there are cables being cut, we seem to be reluctant to want to do anything about it. We are afraid, obviously, because we don't want to go to war, right? We don't want our soldiers going abroad or fighting in a war, right? So we are afraid to go to DEFCON whatever. But that means if we're afraid to do so, Russia has carte blanche to almost do what they like, because they know they can push the envelope because everyone else is afraid to consider that as an act of war. So they can actually do acts of war with some kind of impunity. there is an issue there that really needs to be sorted out, because in my opinion, these are acts of war, and Russia is continually engaged in acts of war in the information spaces, in the cyber spaces, obviously in the conventional warfare spaces. But, you know, we're fighting economically, politically, in terms of narrative with Russia. There's some compromise with what's going on with the AfD in Germany, what's going on in Hungary, what's going on in Slovakia. I'd argue with what's going on in the United States as well. And I think the world is taking this democratic step backwards. We are not supporting Georgia enough. Very interesting interview with Zurishvili, the Georgian president, on the Rest is Politics YouTube channel this morning. Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell having a great interview with the president there, well worth listening to. But I get a sense that we really need to be supporting these countries that are in the process of standing up to Russia. Georgia, Ukraine, obviously, Armenia as well. If we don't, we lose them. And that will take generations to turn about, if at all. We are at an inflection point in the history of this world where it's looking like democracy is slipping away a little bit, in my opinion. And I am worried. You know, you look at I look at the EU and think that is the bastion of democracy at the moment, because I look around the rest of the world and okay, you've got Japan, you've got Australia and New Zealand, but essentially you've got coups going on in Africa, you've got Thailand and other nations wanting to join BRICS, you've got Saudi Arabia wanting to join BRICS, you've got UAE seemingly towards Russia and China. China's involved in Hungary and Slovakia and Serbia with the Belt and Road Initiative. Indeed, in Georgia, as China are building motorways in Georgia as well. And then you've got the US wanting to go in an isolationist direction. And this is the exact time in history where we should not be wanting America to do that. This is the inflection point. And the wrong election result took place, in my opinion. And, you know, talking about wanting to come out of NATO at a time when we should be reinforcing NATO to the hilt. You know, I really do worry. You know, if it wasn't for reform splitting the, you know, reform in the UK, which I think is much more aligned to Russia than any other party in the UK, is now claiming it's the opposition party in the UK and has more members than the Conservative Party. These are worrying times around the world. And this is an example of how these are worrying times. This is a manifestation of that. The question is, what do we do? How robust are we going to be in standing up to this? Anyway, that's enough from me. I am going to get back to my activities of admiring the jumper, the Christmas jumper I got for next year from the Christmas sale today from the supermarket. That's how cool I am. I just want to look like my dad from 1970. And it appears that I've done so. So well done me. Anyway, take care, everybody. Speak to you soon. Toodle pips.